is an aggressive imperialistic bloc. Instead, neutrality is what can guarantee security of Ukraine. These are very common myths about NATO and Ukraine spread by Russian propaganda. Let's hear the facts. It's impossible to impose NATO membership on a country. On the contrary, to join the alliance, a country is required to carry out extensive reforms, switching its entire defense sector to NATO standards. NATO's reason for being is collective defense and not aggressive expansion.
For us, collective defense means basing ourselves on Article 5 of our founding treaty, the Washington Treaty. And the Article 5 very clearly stipulates that an attack on one ally is an attack on all. So if a country decides to become a member of NATO, they do so in committing themselves to help and protect each other and to protect the alliance.
29 countries joined the alliance in its 70 years of existence. Article 13 of Washington Pact allows member states to leave NATO if they wish to, but not a single one has chosen to exit the organization.
NATO has a so-called open door policy. This is a policy of our enlargement since the founding treaty of 1949. The treaty stipulates in Article 10 that any European country can join NATO and become a member of NATO if it is in a position to contribute to our security and prosperity of the Euro-Atlantic area.
Another popular myth is that by becoming a NATO member state, Ukraine would give up its sovereignty and that the whole country becomes something like a military base for NATO. This myth is refuted by the very status of the alliance. It is an international organization that has no authority over policy of its sovereign member states.
Every member state follows its own national legislation, which allows it, for example, to send your troops abroad to support NATO operations, just as you would do, for example, for the UN peacekeeping missions or any other international organization. When it comes to military bases, NATO has military bases on its own territory of its member states. Even for that, we do require a consent of a member state to station NATO equipment and NATO soldiers on its territories.
Another myth is that Ukrainian military will be used as cannon fodder in NATO's missions. The fact is, every member of the alliance is within rights to decide for themselves whether to participate in each given military operation. On top of the above, decisions of that kind are put to vote and cannot be passed without the unanimous support of every member state.
What we do is, in case we do have a military operation, we ask our member states for contributions to these military operations, and it's up to each and every member state whether or not, how many, and what formations they will contribute to our military operations and missions, according to their own national legislation and democratic approvals within their country.
The myth that Ukraine would go bust by having to allocate an inordinate amount of money from its budget to fund the participation in the alliance is very easy to refute.
The ideal expenditure for defense is 2% of the overall GDP. We provide regularly on a NATO website an overview of how much each member state has been spending on the defense. And in fact, we have to say that the majority of the member states actually contribute less than 2% of the GDP.
For 2019, the Ukrainian government allocated around $8 billion for defense, which equates to not 2 but 5% of its overall GDP. Any myth about NATO can be busted by simply reading the North Atlantic Treaty of 1949. Another document that Russian propagandists don't want you to read is the 1997 Founding Act on the Mutual Relations, Cooperation and Security between NATO and the Russian Federation. Reported by Anna Romanovska for UATV.